Human beings have spent centuries trying to define God, yet the essence of the divine is beyond any single definition. Attempts to conceptualize God often lead to distortion, reducing the infinite into something finite, the limitless into something confined by human understanding. The human mind, limited by its perception of time and space, struggles to grasp something that transcends all boundaries. The truth, however, is that God is not a man in the sky, nor a distant ruler judging human actions from afar. God is not separate from us, not some cosmic force watching from above and intervening only when deemed necessary. Instead, God is an all-encompassing, all-intelligent ocean of love, and we as human beings are integral parts of that divine consciousness. The divine is not something to be reached. It is something to be remembered. The Course in Miracles teaches that reality consists of only two forces: love and fear. Love is the totality of divine truth, the very fabric of existence, while fear is merely the absence of love. Just as darkness is not a force in itself but simply the absence of light, fear has no true existence of its own. It is simply what remains when love is forgotten. Fear arises only when we choose to perceive ourselves as separate, when we buy into the illusion that we are isolated beings navigating a world that is indifferent or even hostile toward us. The moment we introduce love into any situation, fear disappears. We do not need to fight fear, analyze it, or attack it. We only need to replace it with love, and in that replacement, all illusions of fear dissolve. Fear is not an enemy to be battled. It is merely an illusion to be dispelled. Yet the world teaches us otherwise. We are raised to believe in a dualistic universe, in which good and evil are at war, love and hate are equal forces, and the divine is something external rather than something inherent within us. We are conditioned to believe that there is something broken within us that must be fixed, that we must prove our worthiness to be loved, that God's favor is something to be earned. This is the fundamental misperception of the human mind, the belief that we are separate from God. But the divine is not external. It is not something distant that we must seek or earn. It is the core of our being. We are not separate from love. We are made of love. The greatest error in humanity's relationship with the divine has been the attempt to make God in our own image. Instead of recognizing God as an infinite force of love, intelligence, and creation, we have projected onto God our own flaws, fears, and limitations. If we are angry and judgmental, we imagine God to be angry and judgmental. If we see the world as dangerous and cruel, we assume that God must be vengeful and punitive. Entire religious doctrines have been built around this false notion. That God is an entity who rewards some and punishes others. That God is exclusive, favoring one group over another. And that God's love is conditional, dependent on human behavior. But these projections are illusions. God does not exist within the confines of human limitation. God is not confined to one religion, one nation, or one belief system. God is universal. God is not an old man with a beard sitting in judgment. God is not a patriarchal ruler of the universe who decides who is worthy of grace. God is love itself, boundless, infinite, and ever-present. The Course in Miracles describes human beings as ideas in the mind of God. This means that we are extensions of divine thought, created not as separate entities but as part of the divine consciousness itself. This also means that God is not something we need to find, because we have never been apart from God. The belief in separation is the ultimate illusion. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, we are not separate from the divine. A wave may appear for a moment, distinct in its form, but it is never disconnected from the ocean. It rises, it falls, and it merges back into the whole. So too, do we exist as individual expressions of divine love, but we are never truly apart from the source. To forget this truth is to experience suffering. To remember it is to experience peace. To believe in separation is to live in fear. The moment we perceive ourselves as disconnected from God, we begin to see the world as hostile, dangerous, and uncertain. We see others as competitors rather than companions, as threats rather than reflections of ourselves. We see life as a struggle, something to be conquered rather than something to be embraced. But this perception is false. The truth is that we are not separate from God, and we are not separate from one another. The recognition of this truth is the key to inner peace. At every moment of our lives, we are choosing between two thought systems: the thought system of love and the thought system of fear. The thought system of love is aligned with the divine. It is the awareness that we are connected, that we are safe, that everything happening in our lives is an opportunity for growth and learning. The thought system of love fosters peace, compassion, forgiveness, and joy. It allows us to see the divine in ourselves and in others. When we operate from love, we respond to challenges with grace rather than resistance, with curiosity rather than fear. We begin to see the world not as something to be feared, but as something to be experienced fully, with open hearts and open minds. The thought system of fear, on the other hand, is the thought system of the ego. It is based on the false belief that we are separate from God, from one another, and from love itself. Fear tells us that we must fight to survive, that we must defend ourselves, that we are unworthy, unlovable, and alone. Fear creates guilt, shame, anger, resentment, and suffering. It keeps us trapped in cycles of pain, convinced that we are powerless to change our circumstances, that we are victims of forces beyond our control. The world, as it currently exists, is largely dominated by the thought system of fear. Wars, greed, inequality, and injustice all stem from the belief in separation. When people believe they are separate from one another, they act in selfish, competitive, and destructive ways. But these actions do not reflect reality. They reflect a dream of fear, an illusion that humanity has collectively created. To awaken from this illusion is to recognize that only love is real. Nothing else exists. What appears to be hatred is simply a cry for love. What appears to be anger is a shield covering deep pain. When we see with the eyes of love, we see through these illusions, and we respond to the world differently. The way we perceive the world determines our experience of it. If we believe the world is cruel, we will see cruelty everywhere. If we believe the world is loving, we will see love everywhere. This is not because the world itself changes, but because we begin to see it clearly, without the distortions of fear. The Course in Miracles teaches that a miracle is simply a shift in perception. It is the moment we choose to see love instead of fear, to see unity instead of separation. Miracles are not supernatural events. They are natural occurrences that happen when we align our minds with the truth of love. This means that we have the power to transform any situation by changing how we see it. A person who appears to be an enemy is, in truth, a brother or sister who has forgotten who they are. A moment of suffering is, in truth, an opportunity to deepen our understanding of love. No situation is beyond healing, because love is always present, waiting to be remembered. If love is the only reality, then our purpose in life is to align with love in every moment. This is not an abstract concept. It is a daily practice. Choosing to forgive instead of holding on to resentment, choosing to see the innocence in others instead of their flaws, choosing to extend kindness instead of reacting with defensiveness, choosing to trust that everything happening in life is guiding us toward growth. This practice is not always easy. The world conditions us to respond with fear, to defend ourselves, to seek validation, and to hold on to grievances. But every time we choose love instead, we reclaim our divine nature. Each morning we must consciously dedicate our minds to love. Whether through prayer, meditation, or simple intention, we must remind ourselves that we are love, and we are here to extend love. This is the way to return to God. Not by searching for something outside of ourselves, but by remembering who we already are.